Welcome back. If it's Tuesday, voters are voting in the first major primaries of the 2026 midterms. Those elections taking place across North Carolina, Arkansas, and Texas. And all eyes are on the Lone Star State and its high-stakes Senate race, which has generated competitive primaries on both sides of the aisle, which will be watched very closely for clues about the future of both parties. Incumbent Republican Senator John Cornyn is trying to fend off two challenges from his right against State Attorney General Ken Paxton and Congressman Wesley Hunt. President Trump has not endorsed anyone in that race. Meanwhile, Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett and State Representative James Tallarico are offering primary voters two very different arguments about why they are the most electable Democrat as the party looks to flip Texas's Senate blues for the first time in generations. Joining me now is our NBC News team down in Texas. Priscilla Thompson is in Dallas and Ryan Chandler is in Austin. Thanks to both of you for being here. Priscilla, let me start with you. You are in the Democratic stronghold of Dallas, where there's been some reports of confusion at the polls. What do we know?
Yeah, Kristen. So this stems from some new rules that are restricting where people are allowed to vote. And so many people are showing up at polling sites where they have voted at for years, only to be redirected to a different site. And I just want to give you a look here. You can see we're going to stay as far back as we're required to. But you see that line there before people get into the door. And the county tells me that there are actually people with tablets that are checking people's addresses and redirecting them if they are not allowed to vote at this location. And as of this morning, earlier this morning, when I spoke with one of the judges who was in there on the Democratic side, he said around just under half of Democratic voters were being sent to different polling sites. And Representative Jasmine Crockett was here just a short while ago and was asked about that. And I want to play some of what she had to say about what she's seen going on today with regard to people being redirected to different polling sites.
You know, it's the confusion, it's the games. It is so sad that the Republicans don't know how to win fair and square. The only thing they know how to do is cheat. It is not lost on me that when Donald Trump decided to go after congressional districts, he started in the state of Texas. It's not lost on me that when the Republicans decided that there was one particular county that they specifically wanted to target out of the large counties, it just happened to be my home county. I am here to tell the Republicans they can try all the dirty tricks that they want to try. We are going to win. We are going to beat them. We're going to beat them as it relates to this primary. We are going to beat them with their dirty tricks in November.
And I will tell you, I've spoken to several voters who did walk up intending to vote and were told that they would be redirected, all of them telling me that they were going to go to those other polling sites. But Representative Crockett did say that she does intend to file a request to extend the voting hours as a result of this.
Wow. And very quickly, what are voters telling you is their top issue as they head to the polls?
Yeah, you know, for some people, it is the economy. It is that the wallet, the pocketbook. For other people, especially Democrats here, I did speak to one woman who said that she wants someone who is going to fight and just sort of help to balance out what she sees going on in Washington right now. But interestingly enough, she's voting for James Tallarico. And I asked her, you know, Crockett has sort of portrayed herself as more of the fighter in this race. And she said, yes, she loves both of them, but she feels like Tallarico is ultimately going to be able to flip this seat from red to blue.
All right. Well, it is a heated race for sure. Let's head over to Ryan Chandler. Ryan, you're in Austin. So we're watching the hotly contested Republican primary, of course. What's so fascinating about this, Senator John Cornyn, in the fight of his political life, he's facing a challenge from Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, as well as Congressman Wesley Hunt. Ken Paxton, of course, has a lot of political baggage, but polls show he's actually running pretty strong in this race. What are voters telling you?
He is. You know, the choice that Republican voters see in this primary is between this institution, a longtime senator in John Cornyn, who is seen by some as a conservative with the legislative chops to compromise and others as insufficiently MAGA. And then you have in Ken Paxton, a partisan firebrand who is viciously loyal to President Trump. We are in a Democratic stronghold here in Austin, but we were able to find some Republicans, including one woman who told us she's voting for Ken Paxton to kick John Cornyn out of office, a man who has held elected office for the last 40 years. Here's what she told us, Kristen.
I think he would show be a great leader in the Senate for Texas.
How do you feel about Senator Cornyn's career?
I don't think he's done a great job. I think he's very defensive, and I think that he's quick to put the blame on elsewhere rather than taking it for himself.
What was the top issue on your mind when you stepped into the ballot box?
Putting Americans in Texas first.
That perspective there, indicative of the majority of what the polling indicates is the Republican primary electorate, certainly the most conservative, who are the most likely to show up throughout this primary, Kristen.
All right. Ryan, thank you so much. Great interview. Thanks for bringing that to us. We really appreciate it. And here to tell us what he's watching for tonight is NBC News chief data analyst Steve Kornacki at the big board. Where else would he be on an election night? Steve, break this down. Texas is the center of all of these heated races.
It is, Kristen, and it's not the only state, though, voting tonight. Quick tour of some of the things we're looking at. You're talking about the Senate race in Texas. Could an incumbent senator lose there? How about in North Carolina, one of the other states voting today? Valerie Foushee, incumbent Democratic member of the House. She is in danger of losing a primary, being challenged from the left by Nita Alam. She is supported by Senator Bernie Sanders. We've seen these sort of left-wing insurgencies in Democratic primaries having some success lately. Will a Democratic incumbent, a member of the House, lose her seat in a primary in North Carolina? I think that's one of the themes tonight. Incumbents, will they go down in primaries? That's one to watch in North Carolina. But then let's head over to Texas. Let's talk about that Republican race you were just looking at there. John Cornyn, no incumbent senator has been denied renomination by his or her party in 14 years. Richard Lugar, 2012 in Indiana, was the last one. Cornyn could be the next one now. The suspense tonight, first of all, will there be a runoff? If no one gets 50% plus one, the top two go on. The conventional wisdom right now is saying that would be Cornyn and Paxton. We'll see if that holds true. The way Paxton's been talking in these closing days, maybe it's just bluster. He's talking about hitting 50% tonight. If they do go to the runoff, it's a question of what position the two of them are in. If Cornyn makes it to the runoff, is he lagging behind Paxton tonight? Is it a weak showing for a 20-plus year incumbent here? Is it a surprisingly strong showing for Cornyn tonight heading into a runoff, something that could potentially help him get President Trump to come off the sidelines and endorse him? Many people think if Cornyn is ultimately going to survive, he's going to need the Trump endorsement. Right now, he does not have that. Democrats watching this race, too, they think Paxton is the one they would have a shot at in November, potentially. Who will the Democrats put up in that race? Jasmine Crockett, James Tallarico here. A couple things to look at. I think, first of all, the polling's been all over the place, but one thing the polling all agrees on is that Crockett is winning the black vote, and she is winning it overwhelmingly. That's probably going to be about 20%, about 1 out of every 5 votes cast in this primary. What does that mean for Crockett? Well, her political base is right around Dallas. You just had that report there from Dallas. So look for Crockett. Certainly she's trying to run up the score in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. You know, probably close to 30% of all the votes in the primary are going to come out of here. Another area of strength, just based on having that strong black support for Jasmine Crockett, would be in East Texas, going down, the city of Beaumont here, Texarkana, small towns here with large black populations. This is going to be the core strength for Crockett. As for Tallarico, his political base is right around Austin. A ton of votes. It's overwhelmingly Democratic there in Travis County. A ton of votes there. Look for him to run up the numbers around Austin. And I think the big question, the suspense in this primary, has to do with, it's about a third of the electorate in a Democratic primary, the Hispanic vote. How is the Hispanic vote going to break here? We're going to certainly be looking at the city of El Paso. That's a big one. We will look in South Texas along the border here. Who is winning these places? That might end up being definitive in this primary, Kristen.
Steve, we're going to be watching that so closely. It helped Donald Trump win the White House for a second term. So we are going to be watching the Hispanic vote very carefully, as well as, of course, the African-American vote in all of the different counties you just talked about. Steve Kornacki will be with you all night. Thank you so much. It's great to have you.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.